So there's a few things there. And the first thing is to get out of your own way, really, because if you've been asked to give a presentation on something, it's because you are considered by someone else to know more about that subject than anyone else. So you're the best person to present on that. So actually, the audience doesn't know what it doesn't know. So if you miss something out, it doesn't actually matter that much, unless it's like a crucial sales figure or something that, or the key part of your message where you're trying to get people on board. But just remember that you're the expert because somebody else has already deemed you to be the expert. And in my case, I started off basically talking about myself, which is one of my favourite subjects. And that was my journey into, through and out of aviation and what I went on to do next. So that was interesting to people, but it doesn't make businesses money. So that's a piece that is good for social groups and schools and things like that, as an inspirational bit of work. But actually what businesses want is to earn more money, and people earn more money by keeping their staff, and they earn more money by navigating change well. I had to find the bits of my life that were interesting to people in a way that actually helps them to make money. So I had to pull out those lessons, and I'm more qualified to talk about the lessons that I've learned in the flight deck than anyone else because they've happened to me. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that actually there are certain things you can do before you go on stage. Like, for example, I used to get terrible sim fear. Pilots have to every 6 months go in the simulator and practice all the things that never go wrong on aeroplanes because they're so safe and reliable. And I used to get so ill thinking about this that I'd actually throw up before I went in the sim, which is one of the reasons I haven't gone back to flying. And one of the things I used to do was go to the toilet and stand in front of the mirror. And another captain told me about this. Stand in front of the mirror and strike what's called a power pose. And I can only do it with one arm because I'm holding the phone up with my other arm. But I used to literally stand in front of the mirror and go, I'm strong, I can do this, I've got this. And it always worked really well, apart from the one time, it still worked, but there was one time when I was standing in front of the mirror, roaring at myself, going, you've got this, and heard the toilet flush behind me. So that was a moment of slight awkwardness. And given that there are very few women in a building full of men flying planes, it was pretty obvious that it was me that had been striking that power pose. So that's something else you can do. But the other thing you really need to do before you give a presentation, even if you don't rehearse the whole thing, is you do need to read it out loud before if you're reading from a script, you do need to read it out loud to make sure that you're able to pronounce some of the words that you've got in there. You understand the flow of things. You don't get to the end of a line and pause like my husband always does for a laugh now when he's reading speeches. But that came from one time when he was reading a speech and he got to the end of a sentence or got to the end of the line on the page and just stopped as if it was a full stop. But it was actually halfway through a sentence. So you need to know where those natural gaps are. Write it out in a way that makes that easy for you. And you need to know what it looks like to be on stage presenting to anyone or to be in front of people presenting. And I'll give you a little example. So last night I was out with these 46 captains and we were there for a leaving do for somebody who's 65 and having to retire. And he stood up and gave a speech and it was brilliant. But the thing I really noticed about the speech, apart from the fact it was funny, is the fact that he stood doing this a lot. When he was talking, he was sort of swaying quite a lot and sort of looking down a lot and mumbling a lot. And it's because he's not used to speaking in front of people. He's brilliant. Everything he said was great. But as a professional speaker, I was quite distracted by all this sort of extra movement that was going on all the time. Can you imagine if I was standing in front of you, get a bit with this wallpaper, you get a bit seasick, couldn't you? So there are things like that you need to practice in front of a mirror and make sure find someone in the audience to make eye contact with and make sure you're able to do that. And if possible, do as little, you want to have as little script reading as you can. So if you're presenting on the subject that you're an expert on, you shouldn't need a full script. You should have some bullet points that you can talk to. So make sure what you want to say. And for each bullet point, you can go, okay, what are my 3 key messages here? What are my 3 next key messages? What are my 3 next? So if you're delivering 3 points, you can break that down into 3 more key messages. So they would be my top tips for, I don't know how many tips there are there, but quite a few. But that would be how I would navigate being more confident in front of people.